My name is Catherine, and this is the story of how my wedding day, the day I was supposed to pledge forever, turned into the most satisfying disaster of my life. While everyone else expected vows and champagne, I had something else planned. I was going to reveal the truth about how my husband-to-be, Blake, had been cheating on me with my best friend, Emily. Yes, sometimes the best gift you can give a cheater is exactly what they deserve, the truth, served up in front of everyone they care about. People used to say I had endless patience, that I was the kind of woman who forgave too easily, who believed in second chances even when no one else would. Blake mistook that for weakness. What he never understood is that being patient doesn't mean being blind. And by the time Blake and Emily figured that out, it was already too late. But to understand why my wedding became the most satisfying disaster of my life, you need to see the lies from the beginning. Because betrayal never shows up fully formed. It creeps in, smile by smile, secret by secret, until the whole house comes crashing down. Before I tell you how I exposed Blake to his family and friends, drop a comment and let me know if you have ever been betrayed by a family member you loved so much, and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself. Blake and I met in 2019 at a marketing conference in Denver. I was 34, he was 36, both of us established in our careers, both ready for something real. I ran a successful digital consulting firm I'd built from the ground up after my divorce 3 years earlier. Blake was a senior account manager at a tech startup, charming in that confident but not arrogant way that made him stand out. Our first date lasted 6 hours. We talked about everything, our career ambitions, travel dreams, even our past relationship mistakes. I told him about my ex-husband's emotional affairs and how they destroyed my ability to trust easily. Blake looked me in the eyes and said, "Catherine, I believe in complete honesty. If I'm with you, I'm with you. No games, no backup plans." I believed him. God, I wanted to believe him. For the first 2 years, Blake was everything he'd promised. He celebrated when my business landed its biggest client. He held me through my mother's cancer diagnosis. He even learned to make my grandmother's lasagna recipe because it reminded me of home. When he proposed in December 2021, in front of the Christmas tree we'd decorated together, I actually cried from happiness. Emily had been there for it all. She'd been my best friend since we were 12 years old, the kind of friendship where you know each other's coffee orders, fears, and dreams by heart. She was the one who helped me through my divorce, who celebrated every business milestone, who held my hand during Mom's treatments. When Blake proposed, Emily screamed louder than I did. Naturally, she became my maid of honor. Who else would it be? The wedding planning was everything I dreamed of, a garden ceremony at the Riverside Manor, with Emily helping me choose flowers, tasting cakes, and spending countless evenings addressing invitations at my kitchen table. Blake seemed genuinely excited too, involved in every decision, talking about our future with such certainty that any lingering doubts I had just melted away. Well, almost any doubts. 3 years into our relationship, in 2022, I'd found Blake texting his ex-girlfriend, Sarah, on Twitter. Not just casual happy birthday messages, long conversations about their relationship, inside jokes, even some messages that crossed the line into emotional intimacy. When I confronted him, he broke down completely. "Catherine, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I did it. Sarah reached out when her dad passed away, and I got caught up in old memories. But I love you. I want to marry you. Please don't let this ruin us." He deleted Sarah's contact information in front of me. He gave me his phone password. He even suggested couples counseling, though I said it wasn't necessary. The Blake I confronted seemed genuinely remorseful, genuinely committed to rebuilding my trust. And he did rebuild it. For months afterward, he was more attentive than ever. He'd text me throughout the day, surprise me with my favorite coffee, leave little notes in my car. He proposed 6 months later. I thought we'd grown stronger from working through that rough patch. I thought I'd learned that Blake was human, that he made mistakes but owned them. I thought our relationship was solid enough to handle anything. I had no idea that while I was planning our wedding, he was planning something entirely different. The discovery happened 3 weeks before our wedding date, May 15th, 2023. I was at Blake's apartment, using his laptop to finalize our honeymoon booking while he was in the shower. His phone was charging next to me when it buzzed with a text notification. The preview showed Emily's name and just enough of the message to make my blood run cold. Can't wait to feel you inside me again. My hands were shaking as I picked up his phone. I knew his passcode. He'd given it to me after the Sarah incident and apparently never changed it. The betrayal I uncovered in the next 10 minutes shattered everything I thought I knew about the two people I trusted most in the world. Months of messages. Months. Starting just after our engagement party in January. Emily telling Blake how she'd always been attracted to him, how she was jealous of what we had. Blake responding that he felt the same way, that he'd noticed her before he even met me, but thought she was out of his league. Hotel receipts from the Marriott downtown, the same hotel where we'd had our engagement party. Pictures I never wanted to see. Videos that made me physically sick. Conference calls they'd scheduled when they knew I'd be in client meetings. Even messages about our wedding planning, laughing about how clueless I was, how easy it was to fool sweet, trusting Catherine. The worst part? Emily had been encouraging Blake to go through with the wedding. She'll never leave you. One message read. Catherine's not the type to cause a scene. Just marry her, and we can keep this going. Best of both worlds. Blake's response. You're right. She's so understanding, she'll probably blame herself if she ever finds out. We can have our cake and eat it too. I sat there on his couch, his laptop still open to our honeymoon reservations, his phone full of evidence that the two people I loved most had been systematically betraying me for months. The wedding was in 3 weeks. 200 guests. Deposits paid. Dress altered. Flowers ordered. But more than that, they thought I was weak. They thought I was stupid. They thought I would never fight back. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. I took screenshots. Lots of screenshots. Then I carefully placed Blake's phone back exactly where it had been and closed the laptop. When he came out of the shower, towel around his waist, smiling that same smile that used to make my heart race, I managed to act completely normal. Honeymoon's all booked, I told him, even managing to smile back. Perfect. I can't wait to be your husband, Catherine. The lies came so easily to him. The first 24 hours after my discovery were the hardest of my life. I went home to my own apartment that night, told Blake I had an early morning client call and needed to prepare. He kissed me goodbye like nothing had happened, told me he loved me, said he couldn't wait for our wedding. I sat in my living room until 3 a.m., staring at the screenshots on my phone, trying to process the magnitude of what Blake and Emily had done to me. Not just the cheating, the calculated cruelty of it. The way they talked about me like I was some pathetic character in their twisted love story, someone too weak and desperate to ever stand up for myself. By sunrise, the shock had crystallized into something much more dangerous. Cold, calculated fury. See, here's what Blake and Emily didn't understand about me. Yes, I'm understanding. Yes, I'm forgiving. Yes, I tend to see the best in people and give second chances when others might not. But I'm also a woman who built a multi-million-dollar business from nothing after my first marriage imploded. I'm someone who specializes in crisis communications, reputation management, and strategic information deployment. In other words, I'm exactly the wrong person to underestimate. Over the next 3 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize, a master spy in my own life, gathering intelligence for the most important presentation I'd ever give. First, I hired Marcus Chun, a private investigator I'd worked with on corporate cases. Marcus was discreet, thorough, and expensive, exactly what I needed. I need photographic evidence, I told him in his downtown office, sliding a check across his desk. I need documentation of every meeting, every hotel visit, every moment they're together. I need it to be undeniable. Marcus looked at the screenshots I'd brought him, carefully selected ones that showed the timeline and scope of the affair without being too graphic. He was a professional. He'd seen worse. Mrs. Morrison, I have to ask, are you planning to use this evidence in a legal proceeding? Divorce court? Something like that, I said. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. This cannot get back to either of them before May 15th. Whatever you do, however you do it, they cannot know they're being watched. He nodded. I understand. You'll have everything you need. Next, I installed a GPS tracker on Blake's car. Completely legal, we were engaged. I'd been making the car payments for the last year, and my name was on the insurance. The tracker was small, magnetic, virtually undetectable, and gave me real-time updates on Blake's location. Then came the hardest part. Acting normal. For 3 weeks, I had to pretend that everything was fine. I had to sit across the dinner table from Blake and listen to him talk about our future while knowing he'd spent his lunch hour with Emily. I had to hug Emily when she came over for wedding planning sessions, had to smile when she complimented my dress, had to thank her for being such a good friend. You're glowing, Emily said during one of our final planning sessions, just 10 days before the wedding. We were in my living room, surrounded by seating charts and vendor contracts. I've never seen you look happier, Catherine. I smiled at my former best friend, the woman who was sleeping with my fiancé and calling me pathetic behind my back. I feel like the luckiest woman in the world, I told her. I can't wait for you to be standing beside me on the most important day of my life. Emily actually teared up. Catherine, I love you so much. You're like the sister I never had. Meanwhile, my phone was buzzing with updates from Marcus. Blake's car at the Marriott downtown. Photos of Blake and Emily entering the hotel together. More photos of them leaving 2 hours later. Emily's hair mussed, both of them looking satisfied and secretive. The psychological toll was enormous. Some nights I'd lie awake until 4 a.m., staring at the ceiling, alternately furious and heartbroken. I lost 8 pounds in 3 weeks because I could barely eat. My assistant at work asked if I was feeling all right because I seemed distracted during client meetings. But I kept going because I had a plan, and that plan required perfect execution. See, Blake and Emily had made one crucial miscalculation. They thought that understanding Catherine meant weak Catherine. They thought that because I'd forgiven Blake's emotional affair with Sarah, I would ultimately forgive this too. They were counting on my love, my desire to avoid conflict, my investment in our shared future. They were right about one thing. I was deeply invested in our future. I'd been planning this wedding for 16 months, had put my heart and soul into every detail. The venue was perfect. The flowers were exactly what I dreamed of. The menu was curated to represent both Blake's and my favorite flavors. I wasn't about to let their betrayal destroy something I'd worked so hard to create. Instead, I was going to use their own arrogance against them. 2 weeks before the wedding, I scheduled a meeting with the AV team at Riverside Manor. I'd like to make a small change to our reception plans, I told them. Instead of a slideshow during dinner, I'd like to have the capability for a live presentation during the ceremony itself. Nothing too elaborate, just the ability to display a slideshow on a large screen that all the guests can see clearly. The AV coordinator was confused but accommodating. That's unusual, Mrs. Morrison. Most couples prefer to keep the ceremony traditional and save the multimedia elements for the reception. I know, I said, handing him a deposit check that was 3 times their usual fee. But this is going to be a very special presentation. Something our guests will never forget. I also made changes to our wedding party. Originally, Emily was going to be my only attendant, maid of honor, walking down the aisle alone, standing beside me throughout the ceremony. But I called my sister Sarah and asked her to fly in from Seattle to be a bridesmaid. Sarah, I need you here, I told her during our phone call. And I need you to help me with something important during the ceremony. Of course, Sarah said immediately. Catherine, you sound stressed. Is everything okay? I took a deep breath. Sarah, it's the wedding planning. It's taking a toll on me. She sympathized with me and told me everything was going to go well. I said to her, also, Sarah, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to promise me you won't try to talk me out of what I'm planning. She became so curious and asked me to tell her what it was. I promised I was going to reveal it to her only if she showed up for the wedding. The morning of May 15th, 2023, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. in my own apartment. I'd insisted on spending the night before my wedding alone, telling Blake it would make seeing each other at the altar more special. He'd been disappointed, but understanding. Blake was always so accommodating about my romantic traditions. The real reason was that I needed these final hours to prepare myself mentally for what I was about to do. I sat on my balcony with my coffee, watching the sunrise over the mountains, running through my presentation one last time. In 8 hours, I would stand in front of 200 people and systematically destroy the lives of the 2 people who had systematically betrayed me. The weight of that responsibility was enormous. But so was the clarity I felt about my decision. At 7 a.m., my hair and makeup team arrived, 3 women who'd been recommended by the venue and had no idea they were preparing a bride for the most dramatic wedding ceremony of their careers. You seem so calm, said Maria, my makeup artist, as she worked on my foundation. I've never seen a bride so relaxed on her wedding morning. Most women are nervous wrecks by now. I smiled at her in the mirror. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. That's beautiful, said Jessica, who was working on my hair. Your fiancé is so lucky to have someone who's completely confident in their choice. If only she knew. By 9 a.m., I was at Riverside Manor, getting ready in the luxurious bridal suite overlooking the gardens where our ceremony would take place. The room was filled with my bridesmaids, my sister Sarah, my college roommate Jennifer, and my cousin Michelle. But notably absent was Emily. She texted that she's running late, Sarah told me, though I could see in her eyes that she knew exactly where Emily really was. Family emergency. So she's getting ready at home. I checked the GPS tracker on my phone. Blake's car had been parked outside Emily's apartment building since 10:30 p.m. the night before. They'd spent their final night before my wedding together, probably celebrating their successful deception, probably making plans for how they'd continue their affair after I became Blake's wife, probably having one last laugh about poor, trusting Catherine, who had no idea what was really going on. Perfect. Let them have their victory celebration. It was going to make what happened next so much more satisfying. At 10:30, I put on my grandmother's dress. The 1950s French lace had been restored to perfection, and the vintage cut was incredibly flattering. The long train spread out behind me like something from a fairy tale. When I looked in the full-length mirror, I looked like every bride's dream of herself, radiant, confident, absolutely stunning. Catherine, you look like a movie star, Jennifer breathed. Blake is going to lose his mind when he sees you walking down that aisle. That's exactly what I'm counting on, I said, adjusting the pearl earrings that had been my grandmother's. At 11:30, Emily finally arrived, rushing into the bridal suite with an armload of flowers and a flurry of apologies. She looked absolutely gorgeous in her sage green maid of honor dress, the color we'd chosen together because it complemented the ivory lace of my gown perfectly. Her dark hair was styled in elegant curls, her makeup was flawless, and she was practically glowing. I now recognized that glow for what it was, the satisfaction of someone who thought they'd gotten away with the perfect crime. Catherine, I am so sorry I'm late, Emily gushed, kissing my cheek and stepping back to admire my dress. Oh my God, you look absolutely breathtaking. Blake is going to die when he sees you. Where were you? Sarah asked, her voice carefully neutral. We were worried when you said there was a family emergency. Emily's lie came smoothly, like she'd rehearsed it. My aunt's car broke down, and I had to drive her to the hospital for her dialysis appointment before I could get ready. But I'm here now, and everything is absolutely perfect. She hugged me tightly, and I breathed in the expensive perfume I'd bought her for Christmas. Catherine, this is going to be the most beautiful wedding. You're going to be so happy. I hugged her back, feeling the silk of her dress, the warmth of her skin, thinking about how this woman had been my best friend for over 20 years and was about to discover that betraying me had been the biggest mistake of her life. Emily, I said, this is definitely going to be a wedding that nobody will ever forget. At 12:30, we had our pre-ceremony photographs. Me with my bridesmaids, me with my parents, me alone in my grandmother's dress. The photographer kept commenting on how serene I looked, how she'd never seen a bride so completely at peace on her wedding day. You just seem so confident, she said, adjusting the train of my dress for a solo portrait. Like you know exactly what you're doing and exactly what you want. I do know exactly what I'm doing, I said, looking directly into her camera lens. I know exactly what I want, and I'm about to get it. At 1 o'clock, I had a private moment with Emily while my other bridesmaids went to check on the final ceremony details. She sat next to me on the velvet settee in the bridal suite, took my hands in hers, and looked into my eyes with what appeared to be genuine emotion. Catherine, I need to tell you something important, she said, her voice soft and serious. These past few months, helping you plan this wedding, watching you with Blake, it's made me realize how rare what you two have really is. You're so perfect together, so completely devoted to each other. Watching your love story has made me believe in soulmates again. I squeezed her hands and smiled. Emily, you've been such an important part of this journey. I honestly don't know what I would have done without you. Promise me something, she said, tears starting to form in her eyes. Promise me that no matter what happens in life, no matter how things change or how much time passes, we'll always be sisters. You mean everything to me, Catherine. I can't imagine my life without you in it. I looked at this woman who'd been my closest friend for over half my life, who'd spent the last 4 months sleeping with my fiancé while helping me address wedding invitations, who was sitting here making touching speeches about loyalty and sisterhood while planning to continue betraying me after the ceremony. Emily, I said, my voice completely steady, I promise you that after today, you'll never have to worry about our friendship changing. After today, everything between us will be exactly what it should be. She smiled through her tears and hugged me again. I love you so much, Catherine. I know exactly how much you love me, I said quietly. And after today, everyone else will know too. At 1:45, the processional music began. 200 guests were seated in the garden, friends from college, colleagues from work, extended family members, Blake's business associates. All of them dressed in their wedding finery, programs in hand, phones ready to capture what they expected to be a beautiful traditional ceremony. Through the bridal suite window, I could see Blake at the altar. He looked devastatingly handsome in his charcoal gray tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled, his face bright with happiness and anticipation. He was laughing with his groomsmen, his brother Michael, his college roommate David, his business partner James. He looked like a man who was about to marry the woman of his dreams, not someone who'd spent the previous night with his fiancé's best friend. My father knocked on the bridal suite door, looking distinguished in his navy suit. Catherine, sweetheart, are you ready? I took one final look at myself in the full-length mirror. My grandmother's lace dress, restored to perfection. My hair in soft Hollywood waves, held back with the pearl comb that had been in our family for 3 generations. My makeup subtle and elegant, designed to photograph beautifully. I looked like every bride's fantasy of herself on her wedding day. I looked happy, confident, radiant, completely in love. In 15 minutes, I was going to shatter that image forever. But I was also going to reclaim my dignity, my self-respect, and my future. I'm ready, Dad, I said. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. The processional began with Jennifer and Michelle, walking slowly down the rose-petal-strewn aisle in their dusty rose dresses, carrying bouquets of white peonies and baby's breath. They both looked beautiful, smiling at the guests, completely unaware that they were part of the most dramatic wedding ceremony any of these people would ever witness. Then came Sarah, in her slightly different bridesmaid dress that marked her as my sister and secret accomplice. As she passed the bridal suite window, she caught my eye and gave me the tiniest nod. Everything was ready. Finally, Emily walked down the aisle in her sage green maid of honor dress, her bouquet of white roses perfect against the flowing silk. She looked radiant, confident, absolutely beautiful. From my vantage point, I could see her smiling at the guests, many of whom had known her since we were children. She looked so happy, so secure in her deception, so completely confident that she'd fooled everyone. She had no idea that she was walking toward her own complete destruction. Then it was my turn. My father offered me his arm, and we stepped out of the manor house into the perfect May afternoon. The gardens were spectacular, every flower in bloom, every detail exactly as I'd planned during 16 months of careful preparation. 200 faces turned toward me as the bridal march began, all of them filled with joy and love for what they thought they were witnessing. Cameras flashed, phones recorded, guests whispered about how beautiful I looked. Blake's face, when he saw me, was everything a bride could hope for. His eyes filled with tears, his mouth opened slightly in awe, his entire expression transformed into one of pure love and wonder. If I had known what I knew, if I hadn't seen the messages and the photos and heard the audio recordings, I might have believed that expression was genuine. "You look absolutely perfect," my father whispered as we walked down the petal-strewn aisle. "Blake is the luckiest man in the world." "He really is," I whispered back. "He just doesn't realize it yet." The ceremony began exactly as we'd rehearsed. Reverend Matthews, a kind man in his 60s who'd officiated dozens of weddings at Riverside Manor, welcomed everyone and spoke about the sacred nature of marriage, the importance of trust and commitment and honesty in a lifelong partnership. The irony was almost unbearable. Then came the readings. Blake's sister Ashley read the famous passage from 1 Corinthians about love being patient and kind. My cousin Michelle read Pablo Neruda's Love Sonnet 17, about loving someone without trying to change them. Both readings had seemed perfect when we'd chosen them months ago. Now they felt like cruel jokes. Emily stood beside me throughout, occasionally reaching over to adjust my dress or squeeze my hand supportively. She looked so calm, so happy for me, so completely secure in her role as the devoted best friend. Finally, Reverend Matthews announced that Blake and Catherine had chosen to write their own vows and would be sharing them now. Blake went first, reaching into his jacket pocket for the folded paper he'd been working on for weeks. His voice was strong and clear, carrying across the garden to every guest. "Catherine," he began, looking directly into my eyes, "for years ago, you changed my life completely. You showed me what real love looks like, patient, kind, forgiving, understanding. You trusted me even when I hadn't earned that trust, and your faith in me made me want to become a better man." He paused, his voice getting thicker with emotion. "I know I haven't always been perfect. I've made mistakes and I've hurt you, and there were times when you could have walked away. But you chose to stay, chose to forgive, chose to believe in us. Your capacity for understanding and forgiveness taught me how to be worthy of the kind of love you offer." Several guests were already crying. I could see Blake's mother dabbing at her eyes with her handkerchief. Emily, standing right behind me, was clearly moved by his words. Blake continued for another 3 minutes, talking about my loyalty, my kindness, my ability to see the best in people even when they disappointed me. He promised to be worthy of my trust for the rest of his life, to never take my love for granted, to honor and cherish me until death parted us. "Catherine Morrison," he concluded, "you are the love of my life, and I cannot wait to be your husband." It was a beautiful speech. Eloquent, heartfelt, perfectly delivered. Every word was a complete lie, but it was beautifully crafted. The garden was silent except for the occasional sniffle from emotional guests. Blake folded his paper and returned it to his pocket, smiling at me with such apparent adoration that for just a moment, I almost remembered why I'd fallen in love with him. Instead, I smiled at Blake, at Emily, at all our gathered friends and family, and said in a clear, carrying voice, "Actually, I've prepared something a little different than traditional vows. Blake, you talked about trust, about understanding, about forgiveness. And you're absolutely right. I am understanding. I understand exactly what's been happening between you and my maid of honor for the past 4 months." I watched Blake's face change as my words registered. The blood drained from his features so quickly, I thought he might faint. Behind me, I heard Emily make a small, choked sound. I looked at Sarah and gave her the signal we'd rehearsed. The large screen descended from the pergola behind Blake, the same screen we'd originally planned to use for our How We Met slideshow during the reception. Sarah handed me the remote control. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced to the suddenly silent crowd, "instead of vows today, I'd like to share with you some text messages between my fiancé and my best friend." I clicked the remote. The screen lit up with a crystal-clear screenshot of Blake's text to Emily from 3 days ago. "Can't wait to make love to you after I marry Catherine tomorrow. She'll be so happy and unsuspecting. It'll make being with you even hotter." The sound that rose from 200 guests was like nothing I'd ever heard, a collective gasp that seemed to echo across the gardens. Someone's grandmother said, "Oh my Lord," loudly enough for everyone to hear. I clicked again. Emily's response appeared on the screen in her distinctive purple font. "I'll be thinking about you the entire ceremony. Just imagine, I'll be standing right behind her while you're promising to love only her forever. So hot, baby." More gasps. Phones were coming out now as guests realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Blake's mother put her hand to her chest. My father took a step forward from the front row, his face darkening with fury. But I was just getting started. Click. A hotel receipt from the Marriott downtown, dated 2 weeks ago, showing charges for champagne and chocolate-covered strawberries delivered to room 1247. The same day Emily had told me she was helping her sister move and couldn't make our final cake tasting. Click. A photograph Blake had taken of Emily in bed, wearing nothing but the pearl necklace I'd given her for her birthday last year. She was smiling seductively at the camera, her dark hair spread across what I now realized were Blake's pillows. The crowd was getting restless now. Several guests were standing up to get a better view. Blake's groomsmen were looking at him with expressions of shock and disgust. Emily had gone completely pale and was backing away from the altar, but there was nowhere for her to go. She was surrounded by 200 people who were all staring at the evidence of her betrayal. "Emily," I said, turning to address my former best friend directly, "I especially loved this message you sent Blake last week." Click. Emily's text filled the screen. "Catherine is so pathetic and trusting. She actually thanked me yesterday for being such a good friend and helping plan her perfect wedding. After we make out tonight, I want to help her pick out lingerie for your honeymoon. The irony is too delicious." That's when Emily broke completely. She dropped her bouquet and ran. Actually ran in her sage green dress and her carefully chosen heels, pushing through the seated guests, stumbling over the rose petals that had been scattered down the aisle for my entrance. "Wait, Emily," I called after her, my voice carrying clearly across the garden. "Don't you want to hear the rest? I have so much more to share." But she kept running, her carefully styled curls coming undone, disappearing around the corner of the manor house. She could run, but she couldn't escape what 200 people had just witnessed. Blake finally found his voice. "Catherine, please, I can explain." "Explain?" I laughed, and the sound was bright and free. "Blake, the only thing you need to explain is how you thought you could lie to someone who makes her living managing information and crisis communications." I clicked the remote again. The screen now showed a compilation video Marcus had assembled, Blake and Emily entering hotels together in his car, even a damning clip of them laughing over coffee while looking at something on Emily's phone that I now knew were photos from my dress fittings. The crowd was buzzing now, guests talking among themselves, some crying, some looking angry, all of them trying to process what they were witnessing. But wait, I announced, addressing them like I was giving a business presentation. There's more. This is my personal favorite, audio from yesterday's lunch date, recorded while I was at home writing my wedding vows. I clicked play. Emily's voice came through the speaker system, crystal clear. Catherine's going to make such a beautiful bride tomorrow. I almost feel bad about sleeping with her husband behind her back while she's planning her dream wedding. Almost. Blake's laughter followed, equally clear and infinitely cruel. She deserves what she gets for being so naive. I mean, who forgives their fiancé for emotional cheating and then never questions them again? She's basically asking to be betrayed. Plus, Emily's voice continued, after tomorrow we'll have even more freedom. Married men are less suspicious. Catherine will be so happy playing house that she'll never question where you are. And if she ever does find out, Blake added, she won't leave. She's too invested, too scared of being alone again. We can have our cake and eat it too. The silence that followed was deafening. 200 people sitting in a garden on a beautiful May afternoon, listening to the groom mock his bride's trusting nature while planning to continue cheating on her after their wedding ceremony. Blake's mother was sobbing now. Several of his groomsmen were shaking their heads in disgust. I could see phones recording from multiple angles. This was going to be all over social media within the hour. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, gathering up the train of my grandmother's dress. The reception is cancelled, but the bar is fully stocked and paid for. Please help yourselves. After what we've all just experienced, I think we could all use a drink. I handed the remote back to Sarah, who was beaming with pride despite the chaos erupting around us. Blake was crying now, real tears streaming down his face, but they weren't tears of genuine remorse. They were the tears of a man who'd just lost everything and was finally facing the consequences of his actions. Catherine, wait, he called out desperately. Please let me explain. This isn't what it looks like. Emily seduced me. She threw herself at me when I was weak. I never stopped loving you. I turned to face him one final time, still in my beautiful dress, still looking like the perfect bride, surrounded by 200 people who now knew exactly who Blake really was. Blake, I said, my voice calm and professional, you were right about one thing in your vows. I am understanding. I understand that you're a liar, a cheater, and a coward. I understand that you thought you could manipulate me because I'd forgiven you once before. And I understand that you made the biggest mistake of your life when you underestimated exactly who you were dealing with. His face was red and blotchy from crying, his perfect wedding day appearance completely destroyed. Catherine, please, I love you. I really do love you. Emily means nothing to me. She was just what, Blake? Just convenient? Just available? Just someone you could use while keeping me as your backup plan? The entire garden was silent now, 200 people watching this confrontation unfold. I could see camera phones recording from every angle. The wedding is over, I continued, my voice carrying clearly across the gardens. But your humiliation is just beginning. Because here's what else I understand about information, Blake. Once it goes public, it spreads everywhere. And thanks to social media and the 20-plus people recording this conversation right now, everyone you know, everyone you work with, everyone Emily knows is going to see exactly what kind of people you really are. I gathered up my grandmother's lace dress and walked past him, past the altar where we were supposed to have just become husband and wife, back down the aisle I'd walked as a hopeful bride 20 minutes earlier. But this time, I wasn't heartbroken. This time, I wasn't the victim. This time, I was a woman who had just taken back her power in the most spectacular way possible. The aftermath, 40 to 45 minutes. The hour immediately following my altar revelation was controlled chaos, but it was chaos I'd prepared for. My parents intercepted me as I reached the manor house. My father's face was a mixture of rage at Blake and immense pride in me. My mother was crying, but they were tears of relief, not sadness. "Catherine," my father said, putting his arms around me, "I have never been more proud of you in my entire life." That took incredible courage. "How long have you known?" my mother asked. 3 weeks, I said. "I've been planning this for 3 weeks." My mother shook her head in amazement. "You've been carrying this secret, planning your wedding, acting normal around Blake and Emily. Honey, how did you manage it?" "Honestly, pure rage," I said. And the knowledge that they thought I was too weak to fight back. Sarah found us a few minutes later, still holding the remote control, grinning from ear to ear. "Catherine, that was the most badass thing I've ever witnessed. The look on Blake's face when you started that slideshow, I will never forget it as long as I live." Inside the manor house, the staff was handling the logistical chaos with remarkable professionalism. The catering manager approached me with genuine concern. "Mrs. Morrison, we're so sorry about what happened. How would you like us to handle the reception? We can cancel everything, or if you'd prefer, we can convert it to a more casual celebration for your supporters." I looked around the beautifully decorated reception hall, white linens, centerpieces of white roses and baby's breath, the 3-tier cake Blake and I had chosen together. Everything was perfect for a wedding that was never going to happen. "You know what?" I said. "Let's have the party. Anyone who wants to stay and celebrate the fact that I just dodged the biggest bullet of my life is welcome. Open all the bars, serve all the food. It's already paid for." Word spread quickly through the remaining guests. About half had left immediately after the ceremony, probably too shocked to process what they'd witnessed. But the other half seemed energized by what they'd seen, like they'd been part of something historic. My college friends surrounded me, all of them talking at once. "Catherine, how did you keep it together? How long did you know? That slideshow was incredible. How did you put it together? I can't believe Blake and Emily thought they could fool you." Jennifer, who'd known me since freshman year, shook her head in amazement. We always knew you were smart and strong, but Catherine, this was next-level strategic thinking." Blake's family's reaction was perhaps the most satisfying part. His mother, Patricia, sought me out about an hour after the ceremony. She looked devastated but determined. "Catherine, I need to apologize to you," she said, tears in her eyes. "I raised my son to be better than this. What he did to you is unforgivable, and the way he talked about you in those recordings. I'm ashamed that he's my child. Patricia, you don't need to apologize for Blake's choices." "Yes, I do," she interrupted. "You are going to be my daughter-in-law. I was looking forward to grandchildren, to having you as part of our family. Instead, my son threw away the best thing that ever happened to him for a cheap affair with someone who was supposed to be your best friend." She hugged me tightly. "You're a remarkable woman, Catherine. You handled this with more grace and dignity than Blake deserved. I hope someday you find someone who appreciates what they have in you." Blake's sister Ashley was even more direct. "Catherine, I'm horrified by what my brother did, but I'm so proud of you for not letting him and Emily get away with it. They deserved everything they got today." Even some of Blake's groomsmen came to express their support. His college roommate David looked genuinely disgusted. "Catherine, I had no idea. If I'd known what Blake was doing, I would have told you immediately. What he did was inexcusable." The social media explosion began within hours. Videos of my altar presentation were on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter before the reception even ended. #CatherineWeddingRevenge became a trending hashtag by evening. The response was overwhelmingly supportive. Women from around the world were messaging me, commenting on the videos, sharing their own stories of betrayal and revenge. The consensus seemed to be that I'd done something they all wished they could do: face their betrayers with evidence and witnesses, rather than suffering in silence. One comment that particularly stuck with me was from a woman named Lisa in Chicago. "Catherine, watching you stand up for yourself at that altar gave me the courage to leave my cheating husband. You showed me what self-respect looks like. Thank you for being brave enough to choose yourself." But the aftermath wasn't just social media fame. There were real-world consequences for Blake and Emily, too. Blake's startup had a morality clause in their employee contracts, something about maintaining the company's reputation and values. A video of their senior account manager mocking his fiancé's trust while planning to cheat on her after their wedding didn't align with their corporate image. He was fired within 48 hours. Emily's photography business collapsed even faster. She specialized in engagement photos and weddings. Her entire client base consisted of couples planning the most important day of their lives. When videos surfaced of her systematically betraying her best friend while helping plan that friend's wedding, her credibility was completely destroyed. 3 major clients canceled their contracts within 24 hours, demanding full refunds. The professional consequences were swift and severe, but the personal ones were even more devastating. Blake tried calling me 17 times in the first week after the wedding. I didn't answer a single call, but he left increasingly desperate voicemails. The first few were denial. "Catherine, you're blowing this way out of proportion. Yes, Emily and I made mistakes, but it wasn't as serious as you're making it seem. We can work through this if you'll just talk to me." Then came bargaining. "Catherine, please, I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut off all contact with Emily. I'll prove to you that you're the only woman I want. Don't throw away 4 years over a few months of stupidity." Finally, there was anger. "Catherine, what you did was cruel and vindictive. You humiliated me in front of everyone we know, destroyed my career, ruined my reputation. I made mistakes, but I didn't deserve this level of public humiliation." I saved every voicemail. They provided a fascinating psychological study in how someone reacts when their manipulation tactics stop working. Emily's attempts at contact were even more pathetic. She sent me a 10-page handwritten letter 3 days after the wedding, trying to explain herself. "Catherine, I know what I did was wrong, but you have to understand I never meant for it to happen." Blake pursued me. He told me he was having doubts about your relationship, that he wasn't sure he was ready for marriage. I thought I was helping by being there for him during a confused time in his life. I threw the letter away without reading past the first paragraph. Some betrayals don't deserve the gift of explanation or closure. The most unexpected consequence was how the whole experience affected my business. My digital consulting firm specialized in crisis communications and reputation management, and I just demonstrated those skills in the most public way possible. Within 2 weeks of the wedding, I had 12 new client inquiries. All women, all dealing with personal or professional crises, all wanting to work with someone who clearly knew how to handle betrayal and public humiliation with strategic precision. "I saw what you did at your wedding," one potential client told me during our consultation. "I need someone who understands how to fight back when people underestimate you." My revenue doubled within 3 months. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was watching Blake and Emily discover that their actions had isolated them from our entire social circle. Our mutual friends chose sides quickly and decisively. Team Catherine won by a landslide. Mark and Jessica, a couple we'd vacationed with multiple times, posted on Facebook. "After seeing the evidence of Blake and Emily's betrayal, we can no longer maintain friendships with people who are capable of such calculated cruelty. Catherine, we're so sorry this happened to you, and so proud of how you handled it." Even Emily's other close friends distanced themselves from her. Rachel, who'd known Emily since high school, commented on one of the wedding videos, "I thought I knew Emily, but the woman in these messages isn't someone I recognize." What she did to Catherine is unforgivable. The isolation was complete and swift. Within a month, Blake and Emily had lost most of their social circle, their professional reputations, and their standing in our community. 6 months after the wedding, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Blake and Emily had both moved to Portland, apparently unable to handle the social fallout in our hometown. They weren't even together. Apparently, their great love affair couldn't survive the consequences of their betrayal. That was 16 months ago. I'm 38 now, single, and absolutely thriving in ways I never could have imagined when I was planning a wedding to a man who was systematically betraying me. The immediate aftermath of that wedding day was intense, but not in the way you might expect. Yes, there was chaos and drama and social media explosions. But there was also something I hadn't expected, an overwhelming sense of relief and freedom. For 4 months, I'd been carrying the weight of Blake and Emily's betrayal, pretending everything was normal, smiling through wedding planning sessions while knowing the two people I trusted most were laughing about how easily they were deceiving me. The moment I clicked that remote control and showed 200 people who Blake and Emily really were, all of that weight just disappeared. I felt lighter than I had in years. The business growth was immediate and substantial. My consulting firm went from a solid local operation to a nationally recognized crisis communications company. I hired 4 additional employees within 6 months and had to turn away potential clients because we were booked solid through the following year. Apparently, women entrepreneurs love working with someone who's demonstrated the ability to handle betrayal with strategic precision and grace under pressure. My client base expanded beyond corporate crisis management to include personal reputation issues, divorce proceedings, and even political campaigns. Catherine Morrison doesn't just manage crises, one magazine profile read. She transforms them into opportunities for her clients to reclaim their power. But the professional success was nothing compared to the personal growth. I bought a stunning condo in the Arts District downtown, 2,000 square feet with floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick walls, and a view of the mountains that takes my breath away every morning. Every piece of furniture, every piece of art, every design choice reflects my actual taste, not some compromise between what Blake wanted and what I could live with. For the first time in years, I was living entirely for myself. I started traveling in ways I'd never allowed myself to before. Paris last spring, where I took that photography class I'd always talked about but never had time for. I spent 2 weeks wandering through the Louvre and Musée d'Orsay, eating croissants for breakfast and drinking wine with dinner, answering to no one but myself. Japan in the fall, where I learned to meditate properly and found a sense of inner peace I didn't know I'd been missing. I spent a week at a monastery in Kyoto, practicing mindfulness and letting go of the anger I'd been carrying toward Blake and Emily. Iceland this past winter, where I stood under the northern lights feeling more connected to myself than I'd ever felt in 4 years with Blake. The aurora borealis danced across the sky in sheets of green and blue, and I realized that this sense of wonder and possibility was what I'd been missing in my relationship. Blake had made me smaller. Not intentionally, perhaps, but his need to be the center of attention, his subtle criticism of my impractical dreams, his way of making me doubt my own instincts, all of it had slowly diminished who I was. Now I was rediscovering myself at full volume. My relationship with my family deepened in unexpected ways. My parents, who'd always liked Blake but admitted after the wedding that they'd had concerns about his smoothness, told me they were proud of me for trusting my instincts and protecting myself. "We could see you dimming yourself around him," my mother said during one of our regular coffee dates. "You were always checking his reactions, modifying your opinions to match his, downplaying your successes, so he wouldn't feel threatened. We worried, but we didn't know how to bring it up without seeming like we were criticizing your choice." My sister Sarah moved back from Seattle partly to be closer to me, and we've become each other's closest confidants. She's also become something of a legend in her own right, the bridesmaid who helped orchestrate the most famous wedding revenge in social media history. "I still get recognized sometimes," Sarah laughs. Last week, a woman at Starbucks asked if I was the sister from the wedding video. When I said yes, she bought my coffee and told me I was her hero. I've started dating again, but casually, with completely different standards than I had before. I'm not looking for someone to complete me or rescue me or provide me with the life I think I should want. I'm looking for someone who enhances the life I've already built for myself. The men I date now are genuinely interested in my work, my travels, my independence. They ask thoughtful questions about my business, respect my need for space and autonomy, and don't see my success as something threatening that needs to be managed. It's a completely different experience from dating Blake, who'd always seemed slightly uncomfortable with my professional achievements and had a subtle way of making me feel like I needed to choose between career success and relationship happiness. I've realized that the right person will never make you feel like your strength is a problem that needs to be solved. Blake has continued trying to contact me, though less frequently now. The messages have evolved from denial to bargaining to anger to what appears to be genuine remorse, though I suspect it has more to do with the consequences he's faced than actual understanding of what he did wrong. His most recent message, sent about 3 months ago, was longer and more thoughtful than his previous attempts. "Catherine, I know I have no right to contact you, and I know you probably won't even read this. But I need you to know that losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. Not because of what happened afterward, the job loss, the social isolation, the move to Portland, but because I threw away something real and meaningful for something shallow and temporary. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand why I sabotaged the best relationship I've ever had. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I finally understand what I lost." I read the message, felt nothing, and deleted it without responding. That's when I knew I'd truly moved on, not when I stopped being angry, but when I stopped caring enough to be angry. Emily sent one final attempt at reconciliation about a year after the wedding. A handwritten card with a photo of us from high school, both of us grinning at the camera with our arms around each other, 17 years old, and convinced we'd be best friends forever. "Catherine," the card read, "I know I destroyed everything between us, and I know you'll probably never forgive me. But I want you to know that losing your friendship has been the worst consequence of my choices. You were the best friend I ever had, and I threw it away for something that wasn't even real. I'm sorry." I'm so sorry. I looked at that photo for a long time. 2 teenage girls who had no idea that one of them would grow up to systematically betray the other. Then I threw the card away, but I kept the photo. Not out of forgiveness or nostalgia, but as a reminder that people can surprise you, and not always in good ways. The most important thing I've learned is that trust isn't something you give away easily. It's something you build with someone over time, based on consistent actions that align with their words. Blake had rebuilt my trust after the Sarah incident, but only on the surface. Deep down, I'd always been a little more guarded, a little more watchful. My instincts had been trying to protect me. I just hadn't been ready to listen. Now I listen to my instincts like they're an early warning system, because that's exactly what they are. These days, when people ask me if I regret my wedding day revenge, I tell them the absolute truth. I regret wasting 4 years on someone who saw my love as something to exploit rather than something to treasure. But I don't regret standing up for myself when it mattered most. I don't regret refusing to accept unacceptable treatment. And I don't regret showing Blake and Emily and everyone else watching that actions have consequences. The wedding day wasn't just about revenge, though the revenge was deeply satisfying. It was about reclaiming my agency, my dignity, and my future from 2 people who thought they could control my story. I chose not to be the victim in their narrative. I chose not to be the understanding wife who discovers her husband's affair and quietly suffers through it. I chose not to be the loyal friend who gets betrayed and keeps the secret to avoid making waves. I chose to be the protagonist of my own story, and that story required me to fight for myself when no one else would. If you're listening to this and you're in a situation where someone is taking advantage of your kindness, your loyalty, your willingness to forgive, please remember my story. Remember that walking away doesn't make you cruel or vindictive. Remember that demanding better treatment doesn't make you high maintenance or unreasonable. Sometimes it just makes you smart. And if you're someone who thinks you can manipulate the patient, understanding people in your life, because they won't fight back, well, you might want to reconsider that strategy. Because sometimes the quiet ones are quiet because they're gathering evidence. And when they're ready to present their case, they don't hold anything back. Thanks for listening to my story. Remember, never underestimate a woman who's learned to value herself more than she values keeping the peace. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's building a life so beautiful that your betrayers become completely irrelevant to your happiness. And trust me, that's exactly what I've done. If this story gripped you, if it made you think twice about loyalty, betrayal, and what it really means to take back your power, then you'll want to stick around. Every week, I share more real-life revenge stories, raw, unfiltered, and packed with lessons most people only learn the hard way. So, if you don't want to miss the next one, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Not for me, for you. Because the best stories aren't just entertaining, they're warnings, they're reminders, and sometimes they're the little spark that keeps you from making the same mistake. And if you got value out of this one, show some love with a like. It tells me you're ready for more.